I was wondering if one of you might direct me to the castle.
Watch it, will ya?
But he's been very nice to me.
Yeah, well, welcome to New York.
Now I will rescue you!
Who's gonna rescue me?
When the curtain first rose on the film Enchanted back in 2007, it introduced us to Giselle, a fairy tale princess from the kingdom of Andalasia, who finds herself plunged into the live-action reality of New York City. The film blended animation and live action in ways that paid affectionate homage to classic fairy tale tropes, while also gently poking fun at them. It became a beloved feature in the Disney canon, thanks in part to its star turn by Amy Adams, its clever tone, and its musical sequences. Over the years, fans have held onto the magic of Enchanted, and more recently, the story has evolved in new directions. One of the major updates came with the announcement of the sequel, titled Disenchanted, set more than a decade after the original. With that long interval, many wondered whether the original chemistry and charm could be recaptured. The sequel reunites several of the original cast members, including Amy Adams, returning as Giselle, and also sees the return of Patrick Dempsey and James Marsden. The gap of 15 years between the original and the sequel has been acknowledged by the actors themselves, with Marsden joking about how the years have changed him and his Prince Charming glow. Behind the scenes, the development of the sequel was no simple stroll through magical woods. Early announcements date back many years, with the studio exploring different scripts and directors before finally moving forward. What emerged is a film that aims to continue the fairy tale world while interrogating what happily ever after really means after real-world life sets in. The sequel takes the characters out of the strictly fantasy realm and into more grounded settings such as suburban life, while still preserving the musical and magical elements that made the original distinctive. One interesting creative dimension is the music. The original film featured songs by Alan Menken and Stephen Schwartz, and the sequel brings them back. This continuity with the musical creators helps maintain a thematic link between the two films. In Disenchanted, new songs expand on the idea of magic meeting mundanity, and one power ballad, performed by Idina Menzel, speaks to the idea of love power, overcoming changes and challenges. This connects to the broader shift from fairy tale idealism toward more nuanced maturity of characters and setting. From a narrative viewpoint, the sequel positions Giselle and her family in a new environment. They leave the hustle of Manhattan and attempt suburban tranquility in a town named Monroeville in the sequel. That shift signals a move from the spectacular to the everyday and underscores the challenge of bringing magic into the routine of life. Giselle expects a fairy tale, but the suburbs demand a different kind of transformation. The film intentionally asks, what happens when you've already had your big adventure, your entrance into the real world? What happens when you still believe in happily ever after, but you're surrounded by lawns, minivans, and unenchanted routines? The casting choices reflect this shift as well. The returning lead actors anchor the continuation, but new faces join the ensemble, including comedic talent such as Maya Rudolph and others who play new villains or shifted roles in the fairy tale world. The presence of both old and new characters indicates a bridging of the original's nostalgia with fresh angles. For instance, the original villain is revisited in spirit, and the sequel introduces characters who challenge Giselle's assumptions and force her to adapt. In terms of release strategy and production context, the sequel was released directly to streaming on Disney Plus rather than following the theatrical path of the original. This underscores how the entertainment landscape has shifted over the last 15 years and how franchises reposition themselves accordingly. The decision to premiere on streaming also reflects the fact that the sequel was created with the home viewer in mind, rather than a theatrical spectacle. That doesn't mean the ambition is smaller, but that the mode of delivery is different. Looking back at the original film, its legacy remains strong. Enchanted reportedly made more than US $340 million worldwide on a budget of around US $85 million, a significant success that laid the foundation for the sequel years later. The fact that it remains a touchstone for fans of musical fantasy shows how enduring its appeal has been. Behind the scenes, fun facts emerged. The project had been in development for many years before finally coming together, and the film's mix of animation and live action required creative solutions by the director and crew. With the sequel out, reviews have been mixed. Some critics praised the return to the world of Giselle and the continuation of the musical elements, while others felt that Disenchanted did not fully capture the wit, novelty, or balance of the original. Some said the musical numbers felt heavier, the shift in tone more pronounced, and the narrative less streamlined. These critiques point to the challenge inherent in reviving a beloved film many years later. The world has changed, audiences have changed, and the magic has to be rewired for a new era. Still, for many viewers, the sequel delivers what they came for: familiar characters, songs, a sense of whimsy, and the joy of seeing a fairy tale princess navigating a modern setting. The fact that the original leads returned lent weight to the project, and the creative team sought to preserve the core identity of the story, even as they introduced new dynamics. For example, the idea that Giselle's optimism collides with suburban realism carries thematic resonance. It suggests that even fairy tale characters face day-to-day challenges. Beyond the films themselves, there has been fan and industry interest in what comes next. Discussions about a third installment, a potential Enchanted 3, have circulated. While nothing has been confirmed officially, speculation continues about whether the franchise might return again, perhaps focusing on a younger generation or using the fairy tale world in new ways. The long gap between the first and second films may mean that a further follow-up takes time, but the continued interest suggests there is still appetite for more adventures in this space. From the vantage point of the actors, returning to these characters after years poses both opportunities and challenges. For Amy Adams, revisiting Giselle meant reconnecting with an innocence and exuberance she embodied in her earlier career, but also bringing the maturity she's developed since. For other cast members, the passage of time meant acknowledging that their characters, and they themselves, have changed. That adds a layer of realism, fairy tale icons grown older yet still striving for magic. Another interesting update, production details, reveal that the sequel was in the works for many years, including scripts being considered as early as the mid-2010s, and only recently did the pieces align for filming and release. This extended gestation emphasizes how complex it is to rekindle a franchise, especially when balancing fan expectations, story evolution, cast availability, and shifting distribution models. It also highlights how anniversaries and nostalgia drive studios to revisit successful properties. Financially and strategically, the choice to stream rather than release theatrically suggests that the studio saw the sequel less as a blockbuster event and more as a brand reinforcement, leveraging an existing fan base and delivering directly to the digital platform. That doesn't diminish its importance. If anything, it reflects the changed ecosystem of film distribution. For fans, the convenience of watching at home may also matter more than big-screen spectacle. In bridging the original Enchanted world and the sequel, the creative team had the balancing act of preserving the tone part whimsical homage, part genuine fairy tale romance, while evolving the stakes. That means Sis is now tackling more grown-up themes. What happens when you've achieved your dream and then you realize your fairy tale didn't come with a maintenance manual? Does happily ever after mean constantly striving for perfection, or does it mean accepting the messy, ordinary stuff and still choosing magic? The sequel embraces that question. From a fan perspective, there is satisfaction in seeing the familiar musical cues, characters, and aesthetic. Yet, at the same time, there is a longing for the spark of novelty that the original brought. Enchanted delighted because it felt fresh, and part of the sequel's challenge is to capture that same fresh feeling 15 years later. In that sense, Disenchanted stands both as tribute and as evolution. It acknowledges legacy while trying to move forward. Looking at the broader context, the Enchanted franchise exemplifies how fairy tale properties continue to resonate in modern entertainment. The blending of fantasy and reality, the self-referential tone, aware of its own fairy tale roots, and the musical format all contribute to its distinctiveness. The sequel's examination of what happens after the fairy tale moving into suburbs, raising children, balancing expectations, mirrors how audiences themselves evolve as they grow older. The fantasy remains, but the lens changes. As for what's next, while nothing official has been confirmed about a third chapter, the possibility remains open. The creative team could explore new characters, new settings, or deeper dives into the fairy tale world. A younger generation of characters might take center stage, or the story might pivot to new realms altogether. The key question will be, can the franchise keep the magic alive while adapting to new times? From a cast standpoint, revisiting characters after an extended hiatus can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, there is nostalgia, recognition, and built-in goodwill. On the other hand, the weight of expectation is higher, and the cultural landscape has shifted. Actors like Amy Adams and James Marsden have their own evolving careers, and bringing their characters back means balancing growth with consistency. It also means the characters themselves have to plausibly age, evolve, and still feel true to their origins. Finally, for viewers who loved the original Enchanted, the sequel offers a chance to re-enter that world with fresh eyes. It invites us to ask if you believed in magic once. What happens when you still believe, but you're in a world that demands practicality? If you were a princess who found herself in the real world, what happens after the song ends? The sequel channels those questions and wraps them in musical numbers, fairy tale allusions, and modern suburban challenges. While it may not replicate exactly the impact of the original, it offers a new Chapter 1 that acknowledges the passage of time, both for characters and for audiences themselves.